Hello everybody, welcome back to Alan Wall's Photography. This is Alan, and today by popular demand we're going to do a jewelry shoot. It's very embarrassing when somebody goes to the trouble to send me a message asking me to do something in a video and then I forget who asked me. So please forgive me for that oversight. I made a note, but that doesn't work anymore because I lose the notes. Anyhow, two people asked me to shoot a piece of jewelry, presumably to get an idea about the lighting and the setup. So that is what we are going to do today. Before we get started and I get into the piece that we're going to be shooting here today, there's one thing I want to tell you about. I have started a Patreon page. So for those of you not familiar, Patreon is a community of sorts where creators like myself can set up all the infrastructure necessary to accept contributions from viewers like you to support what I'm doing and to support the channel. It is a way for people like me to get paid for the work we do, because at my current rate of advertising revenue, which is $234 a month, I'm probably going to have a hard time making ends meet. There are benefits to being a patron, and they are all listed on my Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/Alan Walls Photography. And over there, I lay out the various different levels and what you get for being a member at those levels. Probably the most interesting part of the whole thing is there is also a community associated with my page, and that is going to be a place where you can go for content that will not be put on YouTube. This will be for patrons only. So if you get a chance, please go over to patreon.com, check out my page, look at the tiers and see if maybe you can support what I'm doing. It would be most appreciated, as you know. So when I was asked to do a jewelry shoot, I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. Watches are always good, but I decided on something that would be even more challenging than a watch. Something with a unique character that would require just about every jewelry photography trick in the book to pull off. What I decided to use was this piece of jewelry. This is an opal. It's an Australian opal, and it's set in a handmade, one-of-a-kind, unique setting with what looks to me like a small peridot stone. Now, opals are particularly interesting. They're a silicone salt. In fact, they're silicone dioxide, which is silica. It's a hydrated salt that when it forms in rock, it forms in layers that have some strange refractive properties. And a really nice opal like this one has some astonishing colors in it. But the way you see the colors in an opal are in real time by looking at the stone from different angles in different lights. Whole new rainbows of color are visible in it, which makes it really difficult to photograph because you're going to freeze that moment and you're going to accept the colors that you can capture on your sensor. So there are several major challenges in photographing this piece. The first is there's a lot of shiny reflective gold. and photographing shiny metal is always difficult. In addition to that, while there's a fair amount of flat facing reflective surface from the gold, there's also a broad rim of gold on either side of the stone. So the stone is set down in this border of gold, and we're going to have to find a way to illuminate that as well, at the same time as eliminating any reflections or shadows in the metal. So it's going to be a tough shoot, and I thought we would just start at the beginning. I have a few things ready to put up, but I haven't assembled the set or anything. I thought we could do that together. Rather than talk about what we're going to do, why don't we just do it, and I'll talk about it as we go along. Ready to photograph some opal? Let's go. Does this lens make me look fat? I think pretty much everything makes me look fat, but anyway, let's get on with this. I'm going to shoot on a low table today, partly because it'll be easier to get everything where I want it, but also behind you is my macro setup. I was planning on spending the whole day today out in the woods. I'm still going to go, but it'll be a little bit later on. But anyway, that's beside the point. We're going to use this platform to shoot from. And the reason I want it low down is I'm going to use a very large, very soft light to light this opal. Now we're going to probably end up using 2 or even 3 lights, but the most important thing is that we get a global light that is very flattering to the stone. And to do that, because I want such a big light, I'm going to use studio flashes. I've got a couple of Paul C. Buff lights ready to go. And I think what I am going to do is use, I think you've seen my scrim before, but I'm going to use this scrim, which is basically just a wooden frame covered with a couple of layers of that architect's tracing paper that I like to use. And I'm going to position the scrim over the table at a slight angle. And my lighting is going to be on the other side of the scrim. The key to a soft light when you're using a bare bulb like I'll be using will be to have the light pretty far back, so that it has less directionality to it. I might even point the bulb at the ceiling and let the reflection off the ceiling go through the scrim. And that'll give a very even, very soft light. And that's where we'll start. Then we're going to have to, once we get that set up, we'll have to deal with how to bring out the details in the stone. But we first of all need the lighting. Now, as far as a prop goes, I've thought about a lot of different things that might work. One of the things I love to use are these chunks of manzanita wood or stone wood or whatever it is. It's a desert root, and they really just make for stunning backdrops. But they're also kind of busy. They've got a lot of interesting lines, and I don't want anything distracting from the opal. Though this would be a particularly appropriate backdrop for an opal, because this makes you think of the desert, and that's where the opals are dug up. But then I thought that seeing as the opal is basically just a form of compressed sand, it's a silicate, like I said, maybe an even better backdrop would be some sand. And I just happen to have a bag of black sand. You can buy colored sand that's been basically painted. I don't like that stuff at all, but this is actually black sand. So it'll look a bit gray, but we can fix that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pile of gray sand on this. This is a piece of matting card, the same kind of mat that you'd use if you were matting a photograph. I wish I had something with a little more texture and a little less papery looking texture, but hopefully the sand will cover most of that, because we're going to be shooting with a macro lens and we're not going to be very far away from the stone. So I'll probably put my subject here, which means I should probably turn my card this way. That'll work better. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up the scrim. The easiest way will be to use a C-stand. The scrim is not particularly heavy. It's pretty solid. It is made of wood after all, but it's really quite light. I really want, I'm going to want this, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move it all the way to the front. Ideally, you can't change the height on a C-stand's feet. Or maybe you can, but I'm not going to risk it. I'll smash something. Ideally, this bar would be more like about here, but there's a way around that. So we'll start here. The idea is going to be to position the scrim like so. I need something lower. Okay, no problem. I really want the angle on this to be more like that, for me to be able to get the light where I want it. So let me go get a couple of light stands and we'll go with plan B. When I decided to use just a couple of backdrop stands and then lean the scrim onto that, which should work fine, except I got the wrong crossbar. I need to go get one that's got a bigger hole in it. So let me do that. This makes more sense. And you want to avoid, I made this one 4x4, so it's there's no advantage to putting it one way or the other. What you don't want to do is rest the paper on the edge of the table, because it will rip through. I need to get a stand. I wonder what would work for that. I have no idea where that little chair came from. I don't think it's mine. The question is that chair now going to get in the way? Probably not. Whoops. I'm a bit OCD about having things nice and square, so let me get this lined up. There. Okay. Much happier with that. Now we can always slide this forward if we need to. This thing's awfully big and bulky to have back here. It's going to get in the way of moving the light stands, but I'll think of something else that's not as bulky in a minute. Okay, good. So the first thing we need to do then now is set up the piece of jewelry, and then we can throw a light up here and get a feel for what it's going to look like. So let me do that now. There is a lot of advantage to keeping stuff like this really simple. Every time you add an element in your composition, it really can change dramatically how you go about lighting it. So one thing I didn't do that I am going to pause and do right now is give this a thorough cleaning. It's been worn, so it's going to have some minute scratches and dings, as they always do, that we can either take care of in Photoshop or ignore, whichever you want to do. But for now, let me take a second to get this polished. Then I'm just going to put a dump of sand right here, which will end up all over the floor. Then we'll position the stone and then take a couple of test shots. One thing that is critically important is getting any little bits of dust or dirt out of all the nooks and crannies. And a trick, if you're photographing something that has a stone like this peridot set without anything behind it like this and open, I don't know if you can quite see that, but this area, it is really important to clean any gunk you can out of that, because that will stop the stone from reflecting as well if it's covered in detritus. Okay, I'm going to give it one more wipe with the jewel cloth. Very, very, very important, if you borrow one of your wife's opals to do something like this, that you do not mess with the stone. It is a very delicate stone. They're soft, and they're also, they don't do well in water. So you just really, probably, we don't need to even touch the stone. I'm just trying to get all of the visible parts of the gold to as high a polish as I can. This is dangerous, me sitting on this little step ladder, because it is approximately 6 inches less wide than that area of my body, and when I stand up it often comes with me. That would be bad. Okay, so rather than do anything fancy to try to distribute this sand, oh dear, I made a mess. I am just going to dump it right here and let it form, hopefully, a mound. I don't want it to be too high, because I want the light to get to it easily. You'll see. I've got the stone and the gold polished as well as I can. Don't really know much about polishing stone, so probably shouldn't have used boot polish though. All right, now I've taped together, I'm sure you shouldn't do this, but it'll only be for a little bit, because when the necklace part was stretched way out to the side, it just didn't look good. We won't be seeing too terribly much of that. It'll be out of the photograph, in other words. So I'm going to lay it down here. Disaster. Okay. Plan B. This cable, this cord is going to need to go the other way. Yeah, it's going to turn over every time. I thought I had it the right way, but I'm going to have to redo this. And I'm going to have to clean up my sand pile too. Maybe I can use this same bit of sticky tape. I didn't think about that, but oh dear. I would be in so much trouble by now. Okay, so I think the only way is going to be to do exactly what I did, but have the stone on backwards. Fidgety work, yeah. That is definitely going to be better if I can keep it there. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna take it off the chain and just shoot the stone, because I don't have an alternative. Oh, I hope I didn't just get grunge on there. All right, that looks okay. Now let's see. Same thing, only properly. All right, I heard that. Keep it quiet in the back. One more try and I'm gonna go to plan B. Plan B. I knew this chain was going to be a problem. Well, let's just, before I give up on this altogether, let me just see what this looks like with the chain the way it naturally hangs. I think that sticky tape just went in my cup of tea. It's turning into one of those days. All right, let's just take a look. I don't like it. Well, if we stay with that necklace, I don't think we're going to get it any better than that. So why don't we leave it like that, see what the pictures look like, and if I decide I just have to use a different chain, I'll go to Walmart and buy one. So what I did was I used the chain that my wife gave me the same anniversary I gave her this. It was around my neck. I had forgotten all about it. But it's so long, I'm going to double it. The trouble is, it's a different color. Yeah, they're different caratages of gold. Wow. Oh, and it wants to turn over in places. We're not going to see the back of it. So if we just have these 4 strands curving off in 2 different... Okay. Well. Oh! It's close. Okay, let's set up our primary light, which is going to be on the other side of this scram, and get a couple of test shots and see what things look like. I'm going to use the D850 with a Tamron 90mm macro. And I'm also going to use a battery. This is optional, but it definitely improves the exposure on your images. And so that we can remember them, I'm going to use a memory card too. Another option, but worth the effort. These XQD memory cards are incredible. They're very, very fast. I don't know about you, but I always try to remember to format my cards before I shoot. If I'm sure I have everything on disk somewhere anyway. Good. Alrighty, now we can begin. Okay. I'm liking that. What I'm not liking is my reflection. So I'm going to start out at ISO 100, 1/250th of a second, which is the sync speed, and F11. The reason I'm going to go with a slightly higher f-stop, a slightly smaller aperture, is because of the fact that the stone's character is deep. I mean, it travels down into the stone, so we don't want to blur out elements that would otherwise be popping through. So let me go ahead and set up the first light, and we'll take a picture or two. All right, so I'm going to use this Einstein from Paul C. Buff, and I'm going to use it without any modifiers. I'm going to use it as a bare bulb. I'm going to start by pointing it at the scrim, though I may well end up pointing it at the ceiling. A tip: if you're using studio lights on C-stands, make absolutely sure that the biggest of the three legs is in line with your light. Stop it from tipping over sideways. All right, so we will. This is the hard part to do by yourself, because I will need to take pictures, and after every one, I'll be moving the light again. The modeling light is not going to be especially helpful. See where well, maybe you can't see that, but okay, that's a good enough place to start. I'm going to use a pretty standard Pocket Wizard set for this. Unfortunately, when you're doing this solo, you have to stop what you're doing every time you want to change the power or move the light or anything else. Alrighty, that's a good start. That should be out of the way. All right, let me put that back where it was. Okay, well, you got to start somewhere. So I don't think any of the lights in the room, except maybe this video light, are going to get in the way. But let me check. Pitch black, so we're good. That's a mandatory step you need to take if you're using studio lights in a lit room like this. Start out by taking a shot to make sure that none of this ambient light is messing with us. All right, let's see what it looks like. Pitch dark. I'm gonna have to go up there again, increase the power, move it a little bit closer. I'm going to be making a lot of changes, so maybe I'll just do that and come back when we're closer. So I have right now just one light above the scrim. It's almost on the ceiling. And I had to climb up there and bump the power up. And you might wonder, well, why didn't you just lower the light instead of bumping the power up? And that's probably the single key lesson from this, is that lowering the light will indeed increase the brightness, but it will also change the quality of the light. It will get more and more specular as it gets closer to the diffuser. The further away it is, the softer and more global it is. And that really is the most important lesson to be learned is that we have to adjust the power and pay attention to the softness of the light at the same time. Let's see what that looks like. That's actually not bad. I think we have room to lower it just a little bit, but I'm also going to have to bump up the power. I'm going to follow my own rule, and I'm not going to do two things at once. That is so important when you're doing stuff like this, is make your changes one at a time. If you change two things and the picture gets better, you don't know what it is that just made it better, and you're as bad off as you were when you started. All right, well, I'll show this to you. I still think we need more light, but it's already very nice looking. I am now going to lower the light source. Get it back where it was. I really need to angle, well, let's see what that does. Okay. I'm happy with this as the base shot, but there are a few issues with it. First of all, and I'll blow these up and show them to you. I'm very happy with the lighting on the peridot. It's beautiful. It really shows all the facets. Obviously, the most important thing is we've got to get rid of my elongated face out of the, it's this curved flat piece of gold right here that is causing most of the problems now. So we have to get rid of that completely. And we have to find a way to get more light around the left edge. It's also very slightly out of focus. That's unacceptable. Okay, much better. I think we're going to need to add a second light, probably from down here, because most of the real sparkle in this stone is when I angle it for the light to come in from the side. So I think we're going to need another light, but we also need to get rid of the reflections. And to do that, we'll use this. This is just a sheet of foam board that has a 90mm macro lens hole size cut in it. And we're going to position this in such a way that it blocks me off from the picture. But there's a second benefit to this, is when we use this, some of this light that's coming through is going to bounce off this this barrier, and it may give enough light to the edges of the setting to use. The question is, I am probably going to have to recompose the shot because the card won't fit the way I have it. Let me recompose the shot first, and then we'll get that in position. So let me show you what the problem is. the way I have the camera situated, it's virtually impossible for me to get the shot I want and get my card in position just because of the way everything is. And the problem is that I could get the camera in a better position looking further down onto the stone, but in doing so, it will block the card. And the reason that's an issue is I want to shoot at the best aperture I can. The way the stone is situated now compared to my camera is I'm shooting at an angle. I'm shooting obliquely, which means I'm not going to be able to get the stone in focus from top to bottom without shooting at an either unacceptably high aperture number or focus stacking. Either one would work, but I want to get this in one shot. So what I'm going to have to do is find a way to position the camera a little bit more vertically. I can certainly, get a lot more verticality out of it with this head. But the thing is, as I get more vertical, I have to move this in closer and closer, and it gets in the way of the board. So, does that make any sense? Does any of this make any sense? Does it make any sense that I'm taking pictures indoors on a stunningly glorious spring day when I should be out terrorizing insects? No, none of it makes sense. This thing is an extension arm that I don't know who made it. Smith Victor made it. This is a sturdier version of the thing that comes with a lot of modern tripods, the cross arm. I like this one because it's really built like a tank. If you're going to ever use one of these things, always, just like with the lights, make sure that it extends out over one of the extended legs, never between the legs, because it will tip over very easily. Okay, what I might do is angle the head. Let me see how it looks. So the idea is I'm trying to get a more vertical perspective on the jewelry while leaving myself plenty of room for the card. So what I've had to do is increase the height of my sand stack in order to get the angle that I need from the camera. And now I think my card is going to fit in here nicely. So let me reposition the gem. I am not going to mess with those chains. I'm going to leave them right where they are. Of course, if I was doing this for a client, I'd spend another 2 hours getting them straight. But I think for the purposes of this photograph, that looks better. So let's add the card. Let's see if we can get rid of those reflections. I'm using that stool both to hold the card and also, well, looks like the lens is going to hold it for me. All right. Okay, that is dramatically better. There's an inclusion in the stone that I had not noticed before. All of the reflections are gone. That is from my video light, and the bigger rectangle is from the windows. That will be very easy to flag off, and that's what I'm going to do. So you can you're beginning to get a hint of the colors in here, but I think we're going to have to add a second light from the side to really bring that alive. All right, so let me go ahead and put a couple of flags down and block out that extra light. So what I did was add a black card. So you can see from back here how it's completely blocking the gaps around the scram, and our light ball is still right where it needs to be. Now, the photographs are good, but not there yet, and I'll show you what I mean. We've completely solved the problem up here. There's no reflections there. The peridot is beautifully lit and shiny. The stone is good. There are no more stray reflections in it. You can see the card, but we'll see what we can do to get rid of that. I'm still not happy with this rim. It's not bright enough. I like the fact that it's completely outlined with the edge light, but I don't like it up at the top where there isn't enough light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade out that black flag for a white flag and see if that won't bounce a little bit of light back across onto that side. So let me do that. So with the white card in place of the black card, I definitely think it's better. It definitely is. I'm afraid the stone is looking flat, as in drab. I think what I'm going to do is add one more light, and I might do something unconventional and use a speed light with a snoot and a grid and try to get some light in from the left-hand side directly at the stone and see what that does. So let me go grab one of those and we'll give it a try. So what I'm going to use for the last light is a basic speed light. This is the Godox V862N. I'm going to put it at a pretty low power. I'm putting it in a Bowens adapter so that I can put a snoot with a grid on top of it. And then we'll see if I can find a corner to get in here and see if we can squirt a little bit of light onto the stone. I've got this set in manual on slave, so it'll just fire when the main light fires. So here is what I came up with, and I'm pretty impressed with how this looks. I think it might work. So we've got a speed light on 1/32 power and slave mode with a Bowens mount, a tiny little baby stand that I use for backlighting, and a snoot with a grid on the end. It looks closer, but it's about 18 inches maybe from the stone, and it's coming in pointed exactly at the part of the stone housing or mounting that I want to have some highlights. So let me bend this out of the way and let me see if we can get our flag back in position without, fits like something that fits is how it fits. And we're still framed up nicely. Oh dear, this is a wobbly stand. Let's take a test shot, see what we get. It's pointed too low and it's leaving a horrible hot spot. Let me try to bump that down a little and aim it ever so slightly forward. Let's try that. It seemed like it would be a brilliant idea. That's terrible. Okay, I've got another plan. We'll pull it out from there and use it above the scrim and see if that softens it just a little bit and still catches that side of the mount. Okay? All right, so the test with the light inside the tent was hopeless. And I've taken a couple of test shots, and we're really going to need to position it above. I've increased the power to 1/32, and yeah, I don't want to hold this. I think I'll stick it on a, well, I'll do that right now. This was going to be a quick video so that I could get outside, and it's heading towards evening time. I'll tell you something that I haven't done. I want to give absolutely all the credit for most of these ideas to the great Carl Taylor. I've mentioned him many times before. I've studied his work for years, and he is an astonishingly skilled product and portrait photographer who just is as good as it gets. If you think I'm a perfectionist, you should see some of his stuff. And I actually strongly recommend you go look at some of his stuff. He's got an incredible website, just absolutely full of great information. I think he's a hero when it comes to photography education. He can be a bit of a snarky guy, but that's okay, I suppose, if you're a smashing photography teacher. Anyway, check his stuff out. Almost everything that I do in terms of product and stuff like this, jewelry stuff, is based on the principles that I've learned from him. He would absolutely flip out if he saw this mess on. he would demand that I not give him any credit for anything that I learned. He really is a perfectionist. All right, we've got to start somewhere. Let's see how that works. I've also put a second flag over on the right-hand side of the tent, right there. I think there was a little bit of reflection off the white shelves. Finally. No, not finally. Light's getting in. I wonder where that light is coming from. You know where it's coming from? This is crazy, but this here is a reflection of the black pole that I have the scrim attached to. Can you believe it? Oh, dearie me. All right, plan B. Got to figure out a way to get the white flag reflector underneath that black. So I am finally satisfied one day later with the lighting and the setup, and I'll just walk you through what I've got and show you the pictures, because that's what we're here for after all. It's a bit frustrating because I'm not seeing the colors exactly the way I want them, but I could literally spend a year photographing this thing and not see it exactly the way I see it. Probably because I'm half blind. That might be something to do with it. Anyway, let me show you what I have done. I have left the roof of the tent exactly the way we first set it up. That hadn't had to be moved. I've taken the flag with the hole in it, which is white on the other side, of course, and I have moved it underneath so that the wood is not reflecting, because that's what was causing the dark line at the top of the opal. So now that's blocked off. I added a black flag on the right side because I was getting some reflections off the bookcase. I added a 15-20 pound bean bag that I use for long lens photography. Put that on the tripod because I was getting super nervous with this thing wobbling the way it was. The speed light that we added, I ended up using it at 1/32 power and positioning it a little bit more on top of the stone. But yeah, I must have taken 50 shots to decide on that position. I moved the overhead light, the main soft light, in just a little bit closer. Maybe I should have moved that back out a bit, but all in all, it gives a pretty nice uniform overall glow. And we can take one more picture here. I hope you can see that. I'll tell you right now, I am going to have to stack this in 2 layers, maybe 3, because of the angle that I'm shooting it at. I cannot get the heart of the opal and the peridot both in focus at the same time. I could redo the whole thing, but I've got insects to kill, so I need to move. I'm really happy with the slight underexposure you can see in the histogram. It was getting a little bit far to the right for my taste, and I think that this is perfect to bring out the richness of the gold. Anyway, that's the images in the camera. They'll look a little bit better when they're processed. So, but then again, you've been seeing them because I showed them to you in retrospect. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, that's it. That's all I have for you. I know it's a tremendous amount of information, and watching somebody fiddle with settings, yeah, that's just agonizingly boring. So I'll cut as much of that out as I can and still show you all the important stuff. If I had to boil this down to one concept, if you're shooting really reflective anything, but in particular reflective jewelry, you really need to isolate your shooting chamber from the world around it. Whether you use absorbent black flags or clean white reflective surfaces, sometimes you want to block the light, sometimes you want to reflect clean light back into the subject to light up parts that aren't getting properly lit. But the key is you've got to remove all the ambient extraneous light. And you'll see from these photographs, they were shot in a bright room on a bright sunny day, which is actually helpful for me. It forces me to make sure I stop all the gaps. Well, that's it. I'm going to break all this down and head out with net in hand to gamble through the glades and maybe snag a few invertebrates. Don't forget to go over to Patreon, please. Even if all you do is go look at it and sneer, or look at it and say, he's got to be kidding. It would still be nice if you'd go look at it. It took ages to make. It's why I've been so slow on my comments this last week. I'll see you back in a few days. What do I have coming up? Oh yes, I've got the, I'm going to do an entire episode on setting up and using the Nikon CFI Plan 10X microscope objective. So until then, take care, stay safe, have fun. Talk to you soon.